Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and I'll be your host. And today we're going to be talking about creating a time zone agnostic functional health practice, or staying healthy as best we can, no matter how often we're changing time zones, with my guest today, Jessie Faber. Jessie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Jessie. Also, thank you for being a fan of this show, which is how we first got in touch with you. You have been a long time subscriber to Digital Nomad World on the platform, from what I understand. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been, I think, about a year now, a little over a year. Yeah.
Yeah, and so excited that you're enjoying the platform and reaching out. So if anybody watching also wants to reach out, feel free to do so. We're always looking for guests. So Jessie, I'm happy to have you. You're our very first fan from the platform that's gone
Oh,
onto the show.
perfect.
Yeah. So, okay, first of all, Jessie, I always love to hear everybody's digital nomad story. So, can you tell us about your background and how you became a digital nomad?
Yep. So it goes from a long time ago, and it actually ties into what I do for a living now, because when I was a kid, the only plan I had when I graduated high school was to go to Paris and go to France. And I have no idea what put that in my head. But when I graduated high school, I had no other plans other than to try and figure out how to get there. Um, and I did. I got lost everywhere. It was the first time I ever left the country. That's a whole long story where everything that could go wrong did, but I wouldn't change a thing. And I started traveling more of the US for a couple of years, and then relocated from Michigan to South Florida, and got sick. So I had a long time trying to figure out what was wrong. And um, I was sick with stage 4 endometriosis and some other autoimmune issues for over a decade. And there were times where I didn't know if I was going to be able to support myself or uh, have a job, let alone travel the world or do anything. So that's how I became a functional health practitioner, and then started getting things going in that. And then I realized I was just stuck to my laptop. I always did it as a virtual practice, but I couldn't get away from my laptop. And so I was like, it doesn't matter if I'm traveling if I can't ever get away from this thing. So that's how I switched things. So anyway, it's been, let's see, probably 2 years before COVID, I decided that it wasn't working for me. So I was just going to make a plan and go and figure it out on the way. And so it took, I think it was April of 2021 that I left, and spent about 6 months traveling the US, and then left the country. And we've been to, I think, 5 or 6 countries since then.
Wow. How has it been? Has it matched your expectations?
It's been amazing. It's been, very challenging at times, but the same thing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But it's been awesome. I like just the people you meet along the way, and you really figure out a new way to go about life. And it's just, we just got here to Vietnam, and it's just trying to figure out how to get groceries when I have a fridge this big, and grocery stores aren't really what I'm familiar with here. So
I personally have not found one large supermarket in Vietnam. I'm also in Vietnam. We're about an hour apart from each other right now, actually, which is funny. But yeah, I feel your pain there. So if I had to ask you for one tip you would give to digital nomads starting out, what would you say?
oh boy. So I would say definitely, I would definitely say fortify your immune system and be ready for that, because no matter where you go, you're at some point you're going to get sick, and you're not going to want to have to figure things out while you're sick.
Yeah, especially if you're traveling alone, right? That's a whole other
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah. And the resources, stuff like whether it's through your travel insurance, or there's an app called Air Doctor, where you can do a video call with a local doctor or someone who can prescribe things, or they can have home visits. So it sets it all up for you within the app. So that makes it a lot easier.
Oh, great. Is that around the world? Are there doctors from all over? Or is that based in the States?
No, it's around the world.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to get onto that. This is my
Yeah.
first time to hear about it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Jesse, before we go on to the topic, I want to ask you about if you could share any funny stories that have happened in this whole transition to becoming a digital nomad for you.
There's so many, but one that's just like what a small world it ends up being with the people that do this, that are digital nomads, when you start going from place to place. Um, we started off in Mexico and made friends with this Canadian woman who, several countries later, we ended up being her neighbor by design. We both planned to be in Bali at the same time. And we had been back and forth with a customer service person on our for travel insurance, and she had a friend coming. That person ended up being our customer service person with the travel insurance that she knew from back in Mexico, but we had never met. And then she came to Bali. So does that make sense?
Wow.
It was such a strange, like, sequence of events that, like, and then she's a good friend of ours. And then she ended up visiting us in Kuala Lumpur as well.
I love that story though, because it also makes you realize it is a small digital nomad world, family, and you never know when you're going to run into somebody in the next place. I
Right. And
always
then,
love that.
yeah. And then just here, like, to find out you're, one city away
Yeah,
uh,
it's like
after we were
really.
planning already to do the interview.
Right, right. So it's great. It's like the world just gets smaller and smaller the longer you're a digital nomad, I
Yep,
feel.
definitely.
But one thing we can't get away from are the time zone changes. That's not going to change anytime soon, from what I can understand. So I want to talk to you about that today. First of all, I know that we all can have a lot of issues when we're trying to move and jump around, especially too frequently. So
Mhm.
what are some common problems that people face when they are constantly changing time zones?
So obviously the big obvious one is sleep, and sleep is such a precious commodity, and it can affect your ability to enjoy every place that you're going and be in the moment, and or work with brain fog. But also it'll lower your immune system if you're not sleeping over time. And then there's so many, like, long-term consequences to not getting good sleep. So it really needs to be priority one. Um, and then trying to figure out how to do your work schedules as well. And then there's also people don't know this, but it actually has a big effect on menstrual cycles, which is something that you don't necessarily think about when you're planning these trips, but it can have it can really screw up your menstrual cycles.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so many things you don't think about.
Mhm.
So, do you have any tips for helping us with these problems? Like, let's talk about the sleep. I know sleep is something we all struggle with every day. What
Yeah.
is what can we do for a better sleep when changing time zones?
So I would, when you get to your place, depending on what time it is, if it's the beginning of the day, try to stay up and then go to bed early. So whatever your normal bedtime is, say you go to bed normally at 10, you can still go to bed at like 7 or 8 at night if you get somewhere early, but don't overdo it. But just try to get out in the sun, walk around, move around. If your place has a gym, get on the exercise bike or the treadmill for like 5 or 10 minutes. That makes a big difference. And then uh, when you are in your place, you want to make sure and turn off any overhead lighting. Don't have your screens in front of your face. So overhead lighting makes your brain think the sun is out. The screens from your laptop or your phone or the TV, that blue light that comes registers in your head as brighter than the midday sun. So it's just sending a signal. So no matter what you're doing, you don't want to have those screens in front of your face after the sun goes down. So just like floor lamps or dim lighting towards the end of the night, or the blue light blocking glasses are good, or ambient filters. So, and then there's some supplements that are really helpful. Magnesium is a big one. Ashwagandha is great. And L-theanine is another one that really helps, just with stress in general. And, you're in a new place and your cortisol's up, and you start having all these racing thoughts of the things you're going to do the next day. So,
Yeah, really good tips. What have you struggled with personally as you've started really traveling more, I'd imagine, and changing more time zones once we got out of all the COVID restrictions?
yeah. So it's different place to place. So, like now we're a couple days in and I keep waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I get up early, usually like 5:30 anyway, but I keep waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm trying to like ease into the separate time zone. But for the most part, we've switched quite a few times and we've kind of got it nailed down, and just making sure to send your body the right signals. So like I said, the magnesium and ashwagandha at the right time, like before bed, is a game changer.
Did you take both of those right before bed?
Mm. Yep.
Okay.
And the L-theanine. The L-theanine is a really good tool to have when you have like those racing thoughts. Everybody has that where you go to lay down and you're so tired, but you can't shut your brain off. That's just an amino acid, and it's so great for specifically that issue.
Is that something that you can find in most countries, or do you recommend getting that when you're back in a country or you can get a delivery easily?
I would recommend grabbing it in either your home country, or if it's available where you are now, and stocking up, because it's what I found is it's really a crapshoot depending on where you are. You might be able to like find something one day, and then like in Mexico, you'd find something, but then it was like you couldn't find it for a couple of months, or it was 3 times the like cost of it is back in the US. Or they have no idea what you're talking about when you go and ask for the supplement.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Are you taking supplements to stop your mind from racing only when you're having those feelings, or do you take it generally like every night before bed?
I take the magnesium every night for sure. The ashwagandha, probably half the week. If I'm dead tired and gonna fall asleep, I go without it. But magnesium is a big one where like most people are deficient in it, and it does so many things for the body that most people probably need to supplement with it anyway.
Mhm.
So yeah, and the
Okay.
L-theanine I take if I'm super tired and I'm just ready to go to bed, I skip it. But the magnesium is every night for sure.
Okay. Do you also recommend multivitamins? I've heard this from a lot of people, but then if you have all these other supplements, I don't know how many pills you end up traveling with.
Right. So what I recommend, there's been a lot of research done as far as like multivitamins and how like their effect on actual long-term like health outcomes. And it's not great, because the reality is your body can only absorb so much at one time. And you can't like pack that much stuff in that your stomach can actually break down and absorb. So what I do with my clients is we go through and use an app like Chronometer, which is, you log your food, but it actually logs your micronutrient intake, not just your macros and your calories. So you just log like 2 or 3 days of food. And I like to do this in different places that I go because your diet changes. And so when I was in Mexico, I didn't realize I adapted to a different cuisine. So I was missing out on different nutrients that I just took for granted that I got back in the States. So you can just sort of see what you're maybe missing out on. And then use that to like supplement your diet or add the specific supplement. So, and then different people have issues just, utilizing different nutrients. So for me, like I take a methylated B vitamin because my body doesn't utilize it as well as other people. So, and that's another thing where, you can go to the pharmacy in some places, methylated B vitamin, no big deal. In other places, like in Kuala Lumpur, they were like, what? So didn't know what it
I can
was.
imagine.
Like, okay. So
How did you know that you didn't utilize methylated B as well as other people? do you recommend getting like a test? Is there a test we can take before we start traveling or when we're back in the States, for example, to check all of this?
So I use blood chemistry, and I switched in the functional health space. There's a lot of tests. You can get urine, saliva, and stool tests, and there's some are, research backed, some aren't as great. Many of them are great, but blood chemistry is available anywhere in the world. And it is the most affordable and accessible. So this is what I decided to focus on. And you can actually decipher a lot more about a person's wellness, not just diagnose illness, which is how the conventional medical space usually uses it. And so from doing lab work over time and scrutinizing my diet to make sure I was actually getting it in, I was able to find out that worked for me. But if you're getting adequate B vitamins, but you find like you're still tired or you're still having different issues that relate to having B vitamin deficiencies, you can always try it, methylated B vitamins, and see how you feel for a little while. And then I always recommend getting your blood checked.
Okay, that's great advice. And I know in Thailand, for example, where a lot of us have come this season, you can easily get blood chemistry tests in different places. So I think,
Good to know.
yeah.
I am trying, so I would love it. Anybody wants to send me some info about anywhere that they've gotten blood work done, because I'm trying to put together a resource of how to get blood work done wherever you are. Like the different places you can just go to the lab and order it. Other places you need the doctor to order it, how much it costs, what, the websites and locations and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I know it's really important because we don't know sometimes if we're feeling a certain way, that there could be an easy fix if you just check your blood or,
Right.
do some other testing, and then digital nomad life becomes much easier,
Right.
much more enjoyable. So you also mention on your website, Jessie.life, a list of easy meals and snacks that you can have as you're traveling. And I'm always looking for advice about that because I don't cook so much, and especially in Asia, I'm going out to eat, and I would love to know what the easiest go-to snacks and meals would be to feel good.
Right. So the list I have there, a lot of times people tend to overthink what it is that they, should be eating, and they focus more on what they should not be eating or what they need to restrict. But just simple things like, anything from hard-boiled eggs to and again, depending on where you are, because I just got here, so I'm trying to figure it out as well. But hard-boiled eggs, cans of sardines, guacamole packs in different places, just cheeses and cut up meats. The list is basically just kind of ideas about things that people forget about when they're trying to buy like expensive bars or have elaborate salads and stuff like that. Just the simpler the better. But even like dark chocolate and stuff like that, there's a ton of good nutrients in there as well. And when you're on the go, it's something that's going to make you feel full and satiated, give you a little bit of energy as well.
What are your thoughts on peanut butter? Because I know especially Americans think that, okay, this is a really packable protein, just bring as much of it as I can.
That's interesting. Have you run into a lot of people just carting around peanut butter?
I have American nomad friends that do.
Okay. That's funny. Yeah, it's, if it agrees with you, then sure. I think it's great as long as you look at the ingredients, and it's mostly or all peanuts, and the types of oils. Different vegetable oils can be more inflammatory and cause a lot of people issues. A lot of times people think they have issues with the food, but it's actually the oils that they come in, and they can get oxidized and cause widespread inflammation. So
Yeah, there's so much going on under the surface we need to think
Mhm.
about. So have you broken down this list into different regions of the world? Because when you said guacamole and now I'm in Asia, I don't think I've seen it or I don't know where I would get it
Yeah,
easily.
that list is actually from like way before I left the States, so I could definitely go through and give it a revision.
I'm just thinking like it's that's what I struggle with is when I'm changing regions of the world. Like,
Hmm.
okay, what is available in Vietnam that's easy to find and that is healthy for us and cheap and things like that. If you
Right.
can't find these large supermarkets like I'm struggling to do now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I have noticed. There, a lot of the convenience stores, I mean, from Bali to Kuala Lumpur and just the few stores that I've been around here. Um, it's I'm gonna have to get back. That'll be my next resource. Is
Yeah, no,
like
I think that that'll
specific.
be, I'm excited for that to be added to your website at one point, because I know you're traveling more now. And for most of us, this is our first chance to get back to Asia for several years. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
This was actually supposed to be my first when I decided that I was going to do this. Was everybody was like, where are you going to go first? And I was like, where does one go first when they decide to travel the entire world? And I was like, go to Vietnam because it seems like the most different, like most different culture and, but then I couldn't go. So I finally made it
Yeah.
2 years later.
Yeah, I have like been watching what the locals eat and trying to see like, okay, what looks healthy to me. There's a lot of juices here, which Mexico I know shares that as well, like lots of access to fruits and
Right.
veggies. So hopefully that'll wake people up in the morning if they didn't sleep very well or things like that. Now I want to ask you another question, which everybody that I've run into here is struggling with in Asia.
Mhm.
So most nomads seem to be working late at night here. Like they get on
Mhm.
calls at from 10 p.m. or something. What advice do you have for dealing with this time zone that they're now in and having to work these late hours?
So I would like there's for ideally you are awake with the sun and asleep, at night. And then the next ideal is that if you are have to be awake at night, you keep a consistent schedule. So if you're generally working, 6 hours into the night, but you can still get some daytime, or if it's nighttime, like your body likes consistency, normal bedtimes and wake times. But if you can't do that, then try to get out in the sun at some point when you're supposed to be awake. If you can, so if you have to sleep in, I would get out like within the first half hour, get out, even if it's like overcast. You don't have to, this isn't like a vitamin D expose your skin thing, but just expose your eyes to the sun coming up, the lights. From outside, and then if you can go for like just a slow easy walk before you go to bed, move around a little bit, and then if you can nap, like get that sleep however you can. The statistics for like 6 hours or less of sleep every night for long-term health, it's really bad. So
Okay,
get
so
that
minimum
sleep
of 6. Yeah.
however you can. And that 6 hours is going to take you like anywhere from 7 to 9 hours to, like seven, like it's going to take you another hour and a half of being in bed to get that sleep that you need. Because people in general are awake 45 minutes to an hour or so, and it takes some time to like go to sleep. So it's not just time in bed, it's actual sleep time.
Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I also have found in Vietnam that there are a lot of places that are just like studios,
Mhm.
or like almost like a hotel or a guest house that you're staying in. So it's not even a one bedroom, and people tend to work in their bed because it's either one desk or the bed. And I've
Right.
heard you should not work in your bed because that makes it like the body think, okay, I should be awake and being in this bed instead of
Yep.
sleeping.
Yeah, if you can like here, because we have the exact same situation in and like even for a hotel refrigerator, it's like the smallest. It's so tiny. Um, so but we're fortunate here because there's a great cafe downstairs and then there's a rooftop situation as well. So we've got plenty of spots where we can go and sit at an actual table, order coffee or take our own. It's, not a high pressure situation. So that worked out. And then, definitely to get up and move around every like 20 to 25 minutes, like look off into the horizon. That'll be better for your focus anyway. But it's also better for your eye health. And then, tap your foot, fidget, move around like that, those like little movements, or if you can, if you're on a call and you can pace around, or, just taking any breaks for any sort of movements is going to be best for you.
Okay, thank you so much for those. As I said, I think a lot of people are struggling with that, especially working in Asia, the late night hours.
Right.
I do want to take a few minutes, Jessie, and talk about what you do as a nomad, because I know it came about from, as you mentioned before, you had chronic health illness. So you got a lot of certifications over time. And I was wondering if you could share that, because there might be people that are interested in doing the same thing and starting to work online and helping people in the health space.
Yeah, it's so my first certification, my first certification was as a health coach. And that was the Mark Sisson education. It was the Primal, they changed the name of it. It was the Primal something, but through Mark Sisson, all his primal stuff. And then shortly after that, I was thinking about going through the Nutritional Therapy Association, and went to a conference and found the Functional Diagnostic Practitioner certification from FDN. And it gives me a lot more resources than like a typical nutritional therapy certification. So I can order lab work all over the US. I can order all of those like different functional tests, all the hormone tests and the stool tests for your gut, and cortisol tests. And they have resources that are global. So it's not everywhere necessarily, but there are a lot more options. There's people, I know that there's practitioners in France and New Zealand and Australia, all over Europe. And they have a lot of support if you have questions, no matter where you are. So that's come in handy for me when I'm in different places. I can just post in their Facebook group. But for the blood chemistry, I took their advanced course, and then I also took through Dr. Brian Walsh. The website is Metabolic Fitness Pro. I took his blood chemistry certifications, and that's where the information that I have there. I mean, no matter what I do, I'll use that the rest of my life, because it makes your regular, just what the doctor runs and your annual exam, like so much more valuable for your nutrition, your everything. So.
Wow. Yeah, I actually am going to share with you where I got my blood checked recently, because I got the test back and I didn't admittedly understand a lot of what I was reading, just that if it was in the good range or out of the range. And, you could learn so much more.
Right. Well, and even it just, the conventional ranges are, in the States anyway, are, where to where they are comfortable to diagnose disease. And that's often only because they're comfortable to prescribe medication. So people can have symptoms and disease starting and imbalances and deficiencies well within the functional, like you feel bad, it's all these people go through this where they go to the doctor and they're like, I don't feel good. And well, your labs are normal. So I don't know. Like they just get like, here's an antidepressant, here's, like eat less, sleep more,
And I know it's so frustrating because you just feel helpless. You're like, well, I don't understand it, so I guess I just have to take your word for it.
Yeah.
If you don't mind sharing, do you feel that you ended up solving your chronic illness because you started doing a lot of research, not because the doctors,
Absolutely.
you finally found the right doctor?
Anything, and I even ran the gamut through conventional and functional practitioners, and even a lot of the like alternative stuff, everybody was just focusing on symptoms. Nobody was like dealing with what the, the root cause of my issues were. And a lot of the stuff that they did, I had 3 abdominal surgeries in less than 8 years. I had like medically induced menopause at 30. I mean, stuff that like made my hair fall. It was crazy. And to the point where I didn't know what was the disease and what was like the treatment that was causing my symptoms. And so it took a long time, but like, because I had to learn it all in the first place, but you just have to figure out like what your body needs. Everybody is different. And so, when you figure out how to balance and support your body and like reduce the stresses on it, then you look at the whole person. So yes. And then, but it's also a long game. Your health it's never like you're done, you're like,
Right.
I'm good. Because stress from travel, grief and loss, job stress, relationships, all this stuff is gonna, like, anything that like has an emotional toll is going to take a physical toll. Stuff that takes a physical toll is going to take an emotional toll. So you're just always going to be in this thing where that's why I always advise people get their blood work done every 6 months. Because a year is too long. You think of all the stuff that you go through in a year, and like how much disease can like develop and how off track you can get in that time. And it's just such an easy, like accessible way to go.
Yeah, I think my blood work was about, I want to say it was like $30, something like that in Thailand. So it's, that's worth it every 6 months to catch something that or to feel better after months of feeling down. So, and if we get that right, then change in time zones, really the least of our problems, and we'll be able to do that much more smoothly.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, Jessie, I want to thank you so much for joining us and teaching us all of these new things, so many things I'd never heard of. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before you go?
Yep, I have I just did a post on my blog, the essential supplements for travel. And I advise everybody to take a look at it, even if you're not traveling anywhere, because there's a lot of really good information in there for just your general overall health. And the stuff, the digestive issues and the colds and the sleep issues are the main complaints when people are traveling. And I address all of that and give a list of recommended supplements that you can find on your own. And there's also access to lists products that I would use and that you can order. I have access to Amrita, which does global distribution. So you have to still check and make sure you don't have import taxes and, stuff like that. But they will ship it all over the world.
That's fantastic. And that is on jessie.life.
Yes.
Okay. And if people want to follow you, Jessie, besides at jessie.life, where can they go? Anywhere else we should check?
I'm also on Instagram. It is Jessie _ the word .life.
Okay.
And then Facebook, I'm just on there as Jessie Faber.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jessie. I'm going to put some of these things you've said into practice, and I hope that all the viewers do the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And have a great time in Vietnam.
Will do.